chat a
understand.
little bit before we get started. Well, thank you so much. I really was so excited to connect with you and talk to you because of everything that you do and personally your own accomplishments as a woman of color, as somebody in the STEM field, and so I think that the audience will really love to hear your story, what you do with the organization, and also just learning from you and your personal pearls.
Thank you.
So,
It has not been a straight road at all to now.
yeah,
So I think there can be opportunity for some interesting stories to come up. So I'm
awesome.
always shocked in these opportunities. So we'll see what happens.
Great. And so before we start, I just want to make sure how you're doing on time. Do you have, usually it's about half an hour or so, but if you have a hard cutoff, I'll be
No,
conscious of that.
I think we have the entire hour blocked off for us. So I think we're
Okay.
good.
All right. And I have, I planned a couple questions that I ask, but I also I really don't mind going off on tangents. I think that, having a casual conversation is what I like this to feel like. I always tell my guests that I like it to feel like they're listening in at a cocktail party or, at some kind of a social event where two women meet for the first time and they realize that they are both women in male dominated fields and they compare stories and
Yeah.
so I like that to be the overall feel of it, and so whichever way we go with the conversation is great, and
Now, yeah, that's actually one of the reasons I never ask the interviewer for the questions. It spoils the
exactly right. Perfect, perfect. Okay, and before our recording, I will have pre-recorded an intro, and I'll talk a little bit about your background based on your bio, and also play like a girl, and so then we'll just kind of dive in.
awesome.
All right. Oh, and I will call you. Is it so? Dr. Kim is okay for the podcast?
Yeah,
Okay.
your preference.
I'm sorry.
And what's your preference as well?
I go by Nancy. I mean, professionally, I'm Dr. Shipley, but for the purposes of podcast, I go by Nancy. It's okay.
Okay. That
Yeah. All right. So we'll pause for 1 second and then we'll get started. I am so excited and so pleased to have on as a guest with me today, CEO and founder of Play Like a Girl, Dr. Kimberly Clay, or as she goes by, Dr. Kim. Welcome.
welcome. Thank you. I appreciate being here. It's a bright, sunshiny morning. I don't know how low the temperature is outdoors, but I trust it's cold. So I celebrate the sunshine.
Absolutely. We kind of got to celebrate all the little things that we tend to overlook these days, right?
Absolutely.
So, I would love to dive right in and well, I told the audience a little bit about your background and also Play Like a Girl, the amazing organization that you founded. But I would like to go way, way, way back. And I always love to ask my guests about their origin stories. Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? What were the influences and pivotal events of your childhood?
Yeah. Yeah. I happen to grow up in rural Mississippi, somewhere between Memphis, Tennessee, and Jackson, Mississippi, in this small town called Batesville. It's usually the pit stop between the two big cities or bigger cities. And grew up in a loving family. I'm number three in a group of five children to both my mom and dad, who remained married until his death at 49 years of marriage,
Oh,
just
wow.
5 years ago. He died prematurely of conditions secondary to hypertension and diabetes, and that I mentioned because so much of my early life was about the freedom of living in the now, not really even contemplating, life much further than what we knew. But I grew up with a sense of urgency that where I was and what I was experiencing wasn't all that the world had to offer. So I set my sights very early on getting out and exploring and seeing and being a part of this bigger world. And college was my way out. So I happened to stumble across a an article in our local newspaper about a distant cousin whom I've never met to this day, who had attended a college, a Catholic school, and I grew up good Baptist. I was a church pianist. I was an orator. Did everything in the church, but Baptist. And I saw this article about her attending this Catholic school. I knew nothing about Catholicism, and I just knew that because she got out, I could get out because of that.
Yeah.
And that day, I put a pin in it, and about 4 years later, I entered my freshman year of college at Xavier University of Louisiana in New Orleans. And I often say that is the life altering decision that I made, and completely changed everything for me. Opened up a world that I had no clue about on my little dirt road in Mississippi, and created opportunities that have shifted not only my life, but every person who's touched my life or life that I've touched, and created the family that I now am blessed to share life with. So that's really my story.
And it's funny how these pivotal moments, not that going to college or deciding to go to college is a small thing, but I mean these touch points in our lives sometimes just completely change the direction that we go in. Now, I'm curious, what did your pastor say when you said, "I'm going to a Catholic college?"
I don't think many people thought anything of it, because they really didn't even, I think, process that I was
Yeah,
going to this Catholic school.
yeah.
It gets deeper. I We had a an exchange program with Notre Dame and St. Michael's College in Vermont. So my junior year of college, I actually went to Vermont for that exchange program. And while I was there, I actually taught confirmation classes. So I just literally had this conversation yesterday with a Catholic friend, and it's just amazing how, um, yes, we have these touch points that are just so revolutionary to our own experience.
Right.
I would have never thought, this good Baptist girl would go to a Catholic school and then teach confirmation classes for Catholic kids. But it defined also my worldview, right?
Mhm,
That I could be a Baptist, raised a Baptist at that time, in a Catholic environment, where, the tenets of Catholicism were the core of the organization, the institution, but never forced upon us as students. So there was immediately a sense of inclusion and place
mhm,
at Xavier,
mhm.
that was created and then really perpetuated throughout my 4 years there, such that my husband and I, who met at Xavier, we sent our firstborn there this year. And it is, like, again, one of the most significant accomplishments of our lives. But so much of our life has been defined by that one decision,
Mhm.
and those 4 years that we spent at that Catholic school. Yeah.
That's amazing. Who would you say growing up were your biggest influences? Who played a role in you saying, "I'm gonna go for this," instead of saying, "Oh, I'm gonna just hang
That one
back?"
is so easy. Who else but Oprah? Oprah,
Oprah.
yes. So I grew up in the height of Oprah, right? When she was
Yes.
making that big leap into syndicated television, and the relationship to Mississippi, the fact that that too was her root, her home, um, again helped me to define what was possible for me in ways I had not seen. I mean, just the idea of getting out. The furthest I had family members to go who did not leave for military and come back was
Mhm.
literally 60 miles north
Wow.
to Memphis.
Yeah.
And that was the furthest anyone in my life had been.
Yeah.
So not only was, the popularity and national notoriety of Oprah as a media mogul, a
Mhm.
rising one at that time, was that influential for me. But the fact that she started her journey in my same home state, in a much smaller town even than
Mhm.
mine, that for me was really the first glimpse at what was possible.
And you bring up an interesting point about having somebody that's a public figure as your inspiration and your influence. I would love to, and I'll circle back around because I want to hear a little bit about how Play Like a Girl came to be. But I want to mention that Play Like a Girl has a meet and mentor program, and I want to talk to you about mentors. And I'm sure you've heard it, the quote, "You can't be it if you can't see it," right? And so there needs to be somebody familiar in that sphere that you want to head towards, that looks like you or something reminds you something about yourself. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that quote, and what happens if you're the first one and there's no one there that looks like you? Tell me what you think about that.
So if she can see it, she can be it is like
That's
a
yes,
corner.
yeah, I said it wrong.
No, you said it exactly right. But it's the cornerstone of everything we believe at Play Like a Girl.
Yeah.
What we recognized, 16 years ago when I founded the organization, initially for the purpose of leveraging sport and physical activity for the health benefit.
Mhm.
Uh, Over time, we've evolved it, of course. But what we knew was the power that sport had a power, and specifically the power to transform people's lives. Because if we could make sport and active play fun and engaging and not threatening in some way to
Mhm.
girls. And at that time, we were largely working with girls of color in Alabama, which is where we were founded, that we could truly change the trajectory. Because, one, growing up in that small town with all of the freedom I talked about, I was hinting at too the freedom to eat what you wanted to eat, to be active if you wanted to be, but not to be if you didn't have to be. Because again, we weren't living in this world scope of life lasting, long life impact of one's individual life at that time. And so now, having studied in public health at that point in my life and trajectory, I'd worked at CDC, now pursuing my PhD. I understood at that point the connection between my root story, right? My
Mhm.
journey from small town Mississippi, how that defined so much about who I was and my experience of the world, but also how I was then experiencing my health. So for us, that was really the origin story of Play Like a Girl. And over time, as we continue to do the work, one of the things I recognized in my girls was that there were other holes in life that really needed to be filled. And
Mhm.
again, so many of their stories were a reflection of my story. The lack of mentorship, the lack of women who looked like me, the lack of women in my small town who had the credential, to be a nurse or a nurse practitioner or a physician or a dentist. I'd never seen a person of color in any of those roles. Whereas, sometimes those are the first kind of entry point experiences for a lot of kids. And
Mhm.
then, you go on to in life to experience more professionals who look like you, but I didn't have anything to start from. So I would say for me, the Oprah example, the distant cousin whom I've never met, those were the first role models that I
Mhm.
saw.
Mhm.
And then once I was in college, mentorship was more informal at first. And
Mhm.
then as I progressed through my PhD program in particular, where dissertations become important, you have a research committee, all of that. That is when I started to understand the power of mentorship in a way that perhaps I'd never really thought about it. And so in reflection, that helped to define my decision to also integrate mentorship back in like 2010 with our girls, where one, I recognized that even the girls we were working with at that time in Dallas, Texas, in this huge city, um, though they had had a much different life experience because they were in a big city compared to me coming from a small rural town, many of them still had never left their neighborhoods.
Mhm.
Many of them had never gotten on a plane, never considered college, in a meaningful way, in many ways, like even I looking at an article, choosing a college in that way, right? And so I wanted to be more intentional for those girls to truly help to guide them in decision making as they were approaching high school, because I've always worked with middle school girls because I truly believe that it is centrally important to get girls at the critical point when
Mhm.
they're starting to make decisions about who they are and who they want to be in life, and before too much of their own individual decision making starts to cement.
Mhm.
From an academic perspective, also, I think it is our last opportunity to truly um, shift or direct the direction in which young women will go on their path academically, because courses start to really count in high school.
Mhm.
So that is when we introduced the mentoring part. We fell away from it for several years, and COVID created this great gift, this great opportunity to go back to what we knew and know still works. And so now, though, our approach is a lot different too, in that we take a group based approach. We're not doing one to one mentoring.
Mhm.
We also take the approach of shorter term engagement with a wider variety of women, because we recognize that girls can glean so much quickly from a wide range of individuals. We want to, of course, direct our girls, in particular, Play Like a Girl, towards the more competitive STEM careers: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But we actually offer a range of career options as well. So
Mhm.
women from varied backgrounds across all industries and sectors, to really open the minds and release vision and opportunity, and the fact that girls have limitless possibilities when it comes to their futures. And so that's our approach now to mentoring. I cannot honestly, even today, say that there's been a single woman or man in my life who has mentored me. I did not have the blessing of that opportunity, but there have been a number of people in my life who have served as mentors as well as sponsors.
Mhm.
And some have been more intentional than others, but those individuals, yes, have served very significant roles in my development.
So you were a university professor, a cancer researcher, and it's been a couple decades that Play Like a Girl has been around. I am curious about your personal pivot to transitioning to doing this full time, as far as just facing the anxieties and fears of making a major change and a career pivot for yourself. Tell me about that transformation and how that occurred and how you dealt with it.
Like so much else that I've described, it wasn't intentional. My husband had the opportunity. He trained in medicine. Xavier actually is known for its historical, just amazing history of graduating the highest number of Blacks into medical school across the country. And so he happened to be one of those kids who actually did get into medical school. When you sit in that freshman class and the university president says, look to your right, look to your left, only one of you will be here after, at graduation. So he happened to be one of those at graduation who entered medicine. And so he sub specialized in internal medicine and pediatric cardiac intensive care.
Mhm.
So his training journey was very long. So I was well into my career, had worked at CDC, gone back to get my PhD when he was in residency. and then went back to the classroom as a professor, as you mentioned, continuing my research funded by NIH and NCI, or the National Cancer Institute, while he was completing fellowship. So the next route is somebody needs to finally get a job and pay school loans, right? So he had an opportunity in his first position that would take us at that time away from Atlanta. And it was my idea to sit out the first year to really get our boys settled, get
Mhm. Wow.
bono basis still today. Many people don't know that. We are a small but mighty team of two with a huge support network of
Wow.
volunteers and mentors. But it's just
Yeah.
me and my assistant, Hannah.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. And I laughed when you said it's time for someone to get a job because I
Yeah,
remember I went to medical school late. I was almost 30. And so I remember my friends well established in their careers and I'm like, I gotta go study.
yeah. And you
So I
got to
remember that.
repeat life like, what am I doing over and over? And while we were with our peers, the fact that he subspecialized, at the level of having to go to fellowship, I was like, I'm over this. I did not sign up for any of this. Okay. But he now is in a leadership role with a hospital and is thriving at his gift. He is an amazing physician, and you know, happy. And the other piece is that when we talk about, the journeys of women, right? Often, I am always reminded to elevate the men who also are supporting actors. For me, it
Mhm.
happens to be my husband, but male allies, in the corporate environment are also important. He has funded my dream, my passion.
Mhm.
For these 16 years, he has allowed me to do this as a gift, not receiving a salary or benefits for 10 years. He is working hard to build my retirement along with building his. That's a lot for an individual to carry, in addition to, the normal things that we sign up for when we, go into partnership with people. So
Right.
an amazing partner.
And thereby allowing you to touch the lives of so many girls and women, that maybe would have taken a completely different path.
Yeah,
So I think
absolutely.
that definitely deserves attention. I wanted to mention now, of course, what I do is I buy interesting books and then I decide I don't have enough time to read them, and so then I then buy the audiobook. So I I I was listening to an interesting chapter and a woman who I connected with recently, actually on Clubhouse, Amy Stanton, and she owns a PR agency. She wrote a book called The Feminine Revolution, and there was an
Guess what? Amy's a
interesting
friend of mine. Amy is a
and
friend of mine.
she's a friend of yours. Maybe we should all get on
Oh, girl.
Clubhouse together. So I read or I listened to one of the chapters in the book and talking about redefining what femininity is. And there was a section that was really, really just awakened something in me and a different way of thinking about the word tomboy. And, and I think with Play Like a Girl and the focus on getting girls active and into sports and just the idea that, that's been out there for a long time that girls who play a lot of sports and maybe don't do what is traditionally defined as feminine end up being called tomboys, but that there is kind of a deep-rooted problem in calling girls tomboys. Tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, I have to also pay homage to Amy because she was centrally, involved in elevating Play Like a Girl to ESPN's attention several years ago, which opened the floodgates of support for us and the work that we do and elevating my platform. So she has in me a fan forever.
That's wonderful.
So yes, her book does an amazing job, really setting up this question, right? And it is one that we face in the work that we do at Play Like a Girl, now probably more than we ever had in the past, especially as identity and gender and all of this is evolving, really in the public in ways that we didn't experience it in our childhood.
Mhm,
For me, from the perspective of the girls that we serve, one, we never use that language.
mhm,
Two, we celebrate individuality. And three, we are purposeful about providing for our girls examples of women who fit every persona you can imagine. Because one, we're in the South. So, you know, the conversation you all are having on the West Coast, we haven't even contemplated going there yet, you know? So there's still like a safety word for us
mhm,
before we can even begin the conversation. But it is one that I've been elevating within our organization with our board of directors because it is so centrally important because we are working with middle school girls,
right.
because this is such a critical point in their development. And every word, every gesture, everything we put before them, they're sucking it up like sponges. And it is helping to define who they are and who they will be. So for us, the idea of a tomboy and the connotation of that for girls today is something we sit far, far away from because
Mhm,
I think that it does more damage to our brand and what we try to message as a part of our brand, which is that empowerment from the perspective of defining for yourself who you are, and what you have to offer the world, and that femininity is not tied to what you wear, how you show up, what sport you play or don't play. In fact, one of the most beautiful examples that I have is often I will refer to Michelle Carter, Olympian in shot put. And she actually runs an organization or initiative called Throw Like a Girl. And one of the things that is central to her platform is that as she matriculated through school and evolved as a young woman, it was always critical for her to, master makeup. And so she learned how to, do makeup, probably at a much better skill level than I could. And she often uses that as a gateway with young women in her program to start that conversation about her being in a sport that required even for her to be heavier than
mhm,
normal, athletes in other sports, and what that meant for her self-esteem growing up.
mhm,
And also this relationship of that term tomboy and the belief that somehow you lose your femininity by participating in sport or by taking on muscle for your sport, those types of things. But she uses it as a way, one, to break into the conversation, to level the conversation in such a way that people feel vulnerable and willing to put their vulnerabilities out there. And then she reassures with the fact that for her, putting on her makeup or her lipstick was her showing up for her competition, and that you could celebrate her, whether it was before when she was going and, there was no sweat, or after, because somewhere in between she was going to win the competition. So you had to appreciate her in all of her likeness. And I think that that message is so powerful and so necessary. And so, it is one that we've adopted, as we talk with our girls and deal with issues such as that.
And I will admit that I have been guilty of saying, "Oh, I was a tomboy growing up," and like I never, it didn't really, uh, it just didn't occur to me at the time the depth of what the implications were of calling myself a tomboy.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting thing to talk about and to put out there that, it's not that one is a tomboy, one is a girl that likes to go dig in the dirt.
Yeah.
One is a girl that likes sports. We're still, they're still feminine. You can like things on that whole spectrum,
Yeah,
right?
it is, so much of it, is defined so early, right? So the confidence gap research shows that as early as 5 or 6 years old, girls are already setting up self-limiting beliefs
Yes.
based upon one terms like that, which
Mhm.
typically are spoken from adults to their ears, right? And it's typically parent, and the types of toys that we also introduce and engage girls versus boys, right? How often do you see a parent purchase a Tonka truck for the girl or a doll for the boy? For me, even raising boys, I am a boy mom. Um, I recall, the grandparents and the side eye that I would get if they would go home with a male doll, even, that was really an action figure, because we assign so much meaning to things that perhaps don't have as much meaning until we
Mhm.
assign the meaning to it, and it completely shatters everything. But
Right.
that research, I think, because we really depend on that research for defining a lot for us in our programs, because what we really try to target through our programs is the confidence piece, right?
Mhm.
Confidence, leadership skills, because it's not that girls don't have the aptitude and can't compete in STEM careers or STEM disciplines. It is often that our belief in our ability to compete, or our belief that we belong there, or that there is a place for us. And the same applies even in sport, right?
Mhm.
Especially in elite sports. At some point, you believe your negative self belief outpaces you, because if you don't see someone in the sport who looks like you, if you don't see a pathway through the sport or to a career in the sport, a girl is often, more apt to give up sooner, to
Right.
drop out sooner. And what
Right.
we know about the stats is that girls drop out at twice the rate of boys by age 14, which is that pivotal high school transition year,
Yeah.
where, again, if I lose you in sport, you lose all of the benefits that come with sport. And that's what we're
Right.
trying to deter with our girls.
I think a lot of what your mission is, and also for me in trying to tell the stories that I do on the podcast, is in being out there in the public eye, the public ear, is we are hoping to put confidence deposits in their confidence bank, right? Because the way that I think about it is that bank needs to have a nice stockpile, because along the way there are going to be people who are going to say, "Well, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. You're not smart enough for that." And like you said, the aptitude is there, right? But every time somebody does that and tries to take something from your bank, if you have large reserves, and you'll just push through. And
Yes, that's
so
good. Yeah.
I I love the way that you describe that. So, tell me about a time then when you, along your path to where you are now, somebody said, "You're not gonna succeed at this, or you're crazy. What are you doing?" Like, tell me about a time when someone said that to you, and how did you face that?
Yeah. Um, you know, I think the most paramount that I will ever remember is my high school honors English teacher. Writing was my strongest gift area as a student. In fact, I went to college as a mass communications major and wrote for, local newspapers in New Orleans. And even before that, in high school, I had a column in the Mississippi Clarion Ledger, which was our state newspaper out of
Wow.
but this, white woman, you know, hadn't been much further than her own backyard either, said to me very clearly and pointedly that I could not write, I would not write, and
Wow.
I should think about something else, and in fact, would likely not even go to college. And,
Wow.
I've not really reflected on it a lot in my adulthood, but I would bet that was also another critical touch point in my decision to get away and get out, because that was the environment, right,
Mhm.
in which I grew up, where even today I often share the story and example that in my small town, while there are no signs up, we still have a black park and a white park. The white park has a pool, the black park doesn't. The black sports, recreational sports teams, play off of the black park and all of the grounds there. The opposite is true for the white ones. And when I look at girls' experiences of sport, my niece's experiences of sport, it's not much different from my own and when I was growing up there. Because there was the track and field and basketball team, which was largely black,
Mhm.
and then there was softball that was all white, and cheerleading that was all white with one African American. And so even today, with recreational softball, for instance, my niece wears street clothes, hand me down equipment, and they play in whatever condition, the park is in, grass, in dust, in dirt, in gravel. And on the other side of town, just up the street, honestly, less than 5 miles,
Mhm.
got, a beautiful diamond and kids dressed in uniforms with their names on it, and a
Mhm.
local business is a sponsor. So that that teacher saying to me that I would not and I could not was actually exactly what I needed to hear,
Mhm.
because it was the fuel to my fire that not only will I do it, but you will be ashamed that you ever uttered those words. And honestly, I will say that, there may have been people along the way who thought it,
Mhm.
but I have lived my life with such a fervor and a fire. I have worked from a spirit of excellence in everything that I do, that I've never run into a naysayer since. They may have thought it, never said it.
Yeah.
But that one teacher, that one conversation could have railroaded everything for me.
Absolutely.
But I did have, as I reflected earlier, my faith foundation, which my mom was really, focused on us getting, because she knew that in life, life would bring its own challenges and that we would need something from which to draw. And so it has been my faith that has even kept me in the turbulent times of life. And so from that place of faith and confidence,
Mhm.
I could look that teacher in the eye and basically, you know, smile. I'd assume I did at that time, to not get in trouble for talking back. But
Right.
in my mind process, I'm going to show you. you know?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking, and and we need to encourage young women when they encounter that to kind of say that in their own heads, and maybe have the wherewithal to not get in trouble, like you said, and not say it out loud, but have that filter and just to say, I'll show you, but not just I'll show you for the sake of showing you, but I'll show you because I know me, you
Yes.
know, and knowing that we're capable, that we are capable, and that we can, that we will
And
show them.
I think
So,
as I've evolved to, I'll show you because I also understand that the experience I'm having in this moment, other girls like me are experiencing it. And I can be the gateway to also helping them arrive at that same place, right?
right.
Uh, and that's really the place from which I have given of myself to play like a girl, and so many others that I support over these last 16 years, because I understand that my journey is connected in so many ways to so many others, and
Hmm.
that I have to show up in my greatest power to be my best self every single time I show up, because I am creating the environment for others to be able to do the same thing, but also granting permission. Because
Hmm.
often, especially for us girls in the South, we are told to wait our turn, to sit it out, that the coach will call you in, and we may sit on the sidelines forever and never truly get in the game because we're waiting on someone to give us permission. And it is, I think, critically important when another woman says to you, you are permitted to go as far as you want to go, when you want to go, the route you want to go, anytime you want to go. Because we don't hear that often, it's just not our experience of the world. And, that is so for me, centrally important to how I show up in the world and how I give back to our girls as well.
Well, I always ask my guests what's their one big piece of advice to girls and women who want to pursue careers in male-dominated fields. And what you just dropped right there seems like that one big piece of advice, but do you, I mean, that was amazing. But do you have anything to add to that?
Oh gosh. And I think this is applicable actually in so many other areas. Right now, I reflect on, how many of our political giants have left the earth to go to the life thereafter. And, what holes it creates, what opportunities it creates also. But in particular, the holes when you haven't trained someone to come behind you, where you've occupied space and history, um,
Mm-hmm.
but there's not a person that you've mentored along the way. So I think it goes back to my advice, would go back to the whole conversation about mentorship, that I believe that your greatest impact in the world is in the lives of the people that you purposefully bring along on the journey. Mentorship, but also sponsorship is so
Mm-hmm.
important,
Mm-hmm.
that when you get into the room and you are at the table and you are respected and you have a voice, I believe that we, especially women, have an obligation to make a seat at the table for another woman. That is,
Absolutely.
for me, um, the only way, you will have paid your debt,
Mm-hmm.
society.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that even for, a girl who is maybe 16 who thinks, "Oh, I'm the mentee," to remember that there's a 12-year-old that could look
Yes.
at you and look up to you. And so, I mean, I think that applies just at and just about at any age.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for being on with me today. I feel like we could have gone on for a whole nother hour. You're a busy woman, and I can't keep you for that long. But I would love for our listeners to be able to find you online, keep up with what you're doing, keep up with what Play Like a Girl is doing. So, can you tell us where to find you and your
Yeah,
organization?
I am always actually hidden behind Play Like a Girl's handles. I never get time to really handle my own. So I play like a girl everywhere on social media. And then our website address is also iplaylikeagirl.org. So I encourage folks to, you know, to get involved in some way, even in the virtual world. Meet a Mentor is 100% virtual. So if you have a girl between ages 10 and 13 or in middle school, 5 through 8th grade, who you want to expose her to a wide range of women in a wide range of careers, Media Mentor is a place for them. So right now we're actually enrolling for the spring term. So girls have until February 16th to apply, and we accept every girl. We just want to be able to match them with the appropriate mentors. And, you know, we're super excited to be able to offer amazing opportunities to the girls. And so the best way to get that information is through our website at iplaylikeagirl.org.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to hit
Of course.
pause.